Welcome to section 3.4.4 of our specification, which is under operations and it's called improving quality. In this section, we are going to look at understanding the importance of quality, how businesses can improve quality, paying particular attention to quality assurance. We're going to look at the benefits and difficulties of improving quality and the consequences of poor quality. So what is quality? It's one of those things that's actually really quite hard to define, and often you'll see it loosely defined as something that is fit for purpose. So what does this mean? Who decides whether something is fit for purpose? Who sets the quality standard? And the answer to that is the customer decides. If the customer is willing to buy that product and keep buying that product, then that product is fit for purpose. It's the customer that decides whether the product is an acceptable quality or not. So does quality stay the same over time, or is it something that changes? Well, if you have a think about the Body Shop, in the 1980s, they were perceived to have excellent quality, built on this their stance against animal testing and the fact that they were using a sustainable way of doing businesses and that the ethics was important to them. Now, what would you say about their quality? Would you put them in excellent or good? Or maybe even average, because a lot of things have changed over time. So Body Shop is continuing to do the same thing, but the perception of what quality standard they are operating at has changed over time. And a number of factors have led to that. So if you think about Body Shop's key USP, the thing that set them apart from other competitors, was their stance against animal testing. However, the law has moved on. It is now illegal in the UK and in Europe to test products on animals. So that means that they don't have that USP that sets them apart for other manufacturers of cosmetics anymore. We've also got new competition. So Body Shop started up mid-70s, and during the 80s they were having a real boom time. However, in the 90s, for example, you've got businesses like Lush that have come into the market, and we've covered Lush a little bit, and you know that their products, again, it's moved on. Quality, fresh ingredients, experiential, so you walk into the shop, you don't even have to get into the shop to smell all the products. When you get into the shop, you're able to play with the products, put the bath bombs in water and see how they react, etc. So again, they've set a completely different standard now, and Body Shop is now lagging behind that standard. So if you're now thinking about what causes perceptions of quality to change over time, any of these external factors, like competition, like legislation, like changes in the economy, if people have more money, they might expect to be able to buy higher quality products, whereas if people have little money in their pocket, they may well be happy with the basic versions of products that they can buy. And again, we've already talked about that, the way that supermarkets, for example, change the mix of the products that they put out depending on the state of the economy at the time and the amount of spending power that people have. So lots of factors can influence that, and it's a key thing to be a successful business. A key part of that is keeping an eye on what is going on out there in the world, doing constant market research, coming back to our marketing again, just to understand, are customers' perceptions of what you're doing changing, and do you need to do something about it to maintain that quality USP if that is the game that you're in, or do you need to do something about it to make sure that you're not dropping behind from average if you're in the game of being average, you need to make sure that you're not inadvertently slipping into that poor category because the marketplace has moved on and you have, as a business, haven't caught up with that. So there are intangible and tangible aspects to quality. So tangible aspects are things like reliability. Does your washing machine break down in the first 3 weeks of you having it, or does it work consistently for 10 years? Functionality. Has your new iPhone got a decent battery life? What's the quality of the camera like? So all these sorts of things are tangible features that can be measured, but also we have some more intangible features that are more around people's perception, and these are things like the brand image that your product has. Does your product have a good reputation? And things like exclusiveness. So for example, Morgan cars could be seen to be exclusive because they've got that bit of a waiting list. You can't just go into a shop and buy it. So does your product have that sort of aura of sort of mystery, mystique, something special about it? So all these things, both the tangible and intangible, are aspects of the quality, and aspects that the business will aim to try and influence. So businesses that have a reputation for good quality, I think you can all name things here. So businesses like Apple in the smartphone market, Waitrose in the supermarket market, maybe in airlines you're talking about businesses like British Airways and Virgin. You're talking about production of sort of programming, then BBC's got a really good reputation. I think what is a little bit harder perhaps is the reputation for poor quality. So in here, if you're thinking about supermarkets, some of you may well put Aldi and Lidl in the reputation for poor quality, but I would just caution against that, because actually Aldi and Lidl are both businesses that are growing rapidly and taking market share. So although they're low cost, they are delivering to the customer exactly what the customers want, and more customers are buying more off them, each week, each month that goes by. So they're doing something right. So I wouldn't say they're examples of poor quality business, even though they're low cost, because they're matching the quality with the expectations and the wants and needs of the customer. You will tend to find that poor quality businesses are the businesses that actually go out of business. So they're no longer delivering what the customer wants. So it's actually harder to put businesses into that category. So the benefits of having a reputation for good quality. So competitive advantage. Customers will choose your product rather than go to the competitor because yours stands out in some sort of way. So it's got a USP. So a second benefit, it's got a USP. In the minds of the customers, it is set apart from all the competition. So there are no direct substitutes. People will choose your product. So that will lead to higher sales, another benefit, and also make demand for your product more inelastic because there are no close substitutes. So therefore, you ought to be able to charge a higher selling price. Having these quality systems in place as well can also reduce a business's costs, because if you're not having to answer phone calls, from complaints from customers and give compensation or send out substitute products, etc., or you're not having to manage waste and scrappage inside your factory, then your costs may well be lower, which again can make your product more profitable. And finally, in terms of benefits, it can also give you a reputation, which will give you brand loyalty. If you've got a good reputation, customers will just come back and buy the shampoo off you again rather than going to a different manufacturer, and you'll get that repeat business, and people will be willing to tell their friends, oh, this is the shampoo that I use, I think it's great, etc. So you'll get positive word of mouth, which again will feed that reputation. So now we're going to have a look at quality control and quality assurance, and just make sure that you're clear about the differences of the two approaches. So firstly, quality control. which you can just about read from this slide, is all about detection. So your definition: quality control is a system that uses inspection as a way of finding any faults in the good or service being provided. So the goal of this is checking completed work to make sure that everything that leaves the factory is up to the quality required. The people that do this checking are inspectors. So there's usually some testing at the end. There's a test function that's separate from the production function that just checks that what is going on, what has been produced, is correct. So the advantage of doing this sort of thing, and it's not necessarily people, sometimes it can be machines, is that if you can test 100% of your output, then you can ensure that no defect leaves the factory. So for example, if you think about a factory like Cadbury's producing its Cadbury dairy milk, they can do some checks using machines. For example, they can weigh the product to ensure that it's over 100 grams. If the packaging says the bar is 100 grams, they can make sure that they meet that requirement. They can also do some other sort of checks to make sure that there's no, put it through a metal detector to make sure that there's no metal in there. So some of these types of checks can be automated, but they will also need to do other types of checks where they will just take a sample of bars, and then they will check, for example, if you're producing fruit and nut, that actually the inclusions, that the proportion of fruit and the proportion of nuts in the bar are correct. But they can't do that on every bar. So then there's the possibility that if they haven't got their sort of statistic control around it quite right, that bars with the wrong number of inclusions could actually get through that quality control process. But as I say, if you test everything, so if you're a new car manufacturer and you're testing that the car starts and somebody drives it around, etc., and you test all those little bits, then you can be sure that that product actually works. The advantage of quality control, or the other advantage of quality control, is that it doesn't require staff training, because the people that are making the product are not the ones that are doing the testing. So again, the people doing the testing are the inspectors, and they've just got a set process. So it almost comes back to Taylor and your specialisation of roles, that actually all they need to do is to be able to do the tests, and all the production staff need to be able to do is do their little bit of their role on the production line. They don't need to be able to do both. So it can be cost effective from that point of view. The disadvantage, as I've already said, you need to test all the output. If you want to be 100% sure that each product that leaves the factory is up to standard, then you have to test all of it. The other main disadvantage of this approach is that it is waiting right to the end of the process. So you are scrapping something at the end of the process after it has already been through all the stages it needs to go through. Therefore, it can be quite an expensive process to scrap things. And you may not be able to rework that good, so cost can be a bit of an issue. But as far as quality control, the key things that you need to understand is about inspection, done by separate inspectors, and it is done at the end of the process. Okay, so moving on to quality assurance, and the ethos behind this is about prevention, trying to make sure that mistakes don't happen. And this one is the one that's mentioned explicitly on your spec, so you absolutely must be able to define quality assurance and understand what it's all about. So quality assurance, a system that aims to achieve or improve quality by organising every process to get the product right first time, i.e. prevent mistakes before they ever happen. Okay, so keywords here would be that it's about process, and it's about right first time, and it's about prevention. So make sure that you understand those. So the goal is to work through this process to make sure that you get a good quality output, and everybody is responsible. So every worker in your factory is responsible for ensuring that that goal is achieved, that the process that your product goes through is a good process. So the idea in terms of advantages is that you get quality at each stage. So if something is going on, it's recognised very early in the process. And it also means that staff have that quality assurance aspect to their role. So they've got a wider role which has a bit more responsibility to it, and this should, according to our motivational theorists like Maslow and Hertzberg, this should mean that they are more motivated to do their job. So you might get some benefits in terms of efficiency and staff suggestions and all those types of things. And then the other benefit is that customers should be reassured. If you've got this process, it's working all the way through, then customers should have that reassurance that the quality that they can expect from your business is good. In terms of disadvantages, the main disadvantage is that actually you might need to spend a bit more money on your inputs. So you might need to spend a bit more on your raw materials to make sure that the raw materials are always of a good quality, so that doesn't impact on your outputs. And you might need to spend some more money training your staff so that they can take on this extra responsibility and have a clear understanding of what is acceptable and not acceptable. So the whole workforce might need to be trained rather than under quality control, just the inspectors being trained. So we're now on to making the links between quality and the functional areas of a business. And the chain in the picture is supposed to represent the idea that part of what you need to do in your exam to write good essays is to build effective chains of argument. So nice logical chains that explain what is going on. So our first question, explain how poor quality can impact the finance department. So, you may start with, if a business has poor quality, that might lead to them having a higher scrap rate, which will increase the wastage of raw materials and wastage of labour, etc., which will lead to higher costs per unit for the business. In addition, if poor quality products actually get out to the customer, that might mean more complaints from customers. So a business might have to have more staff in their customer service department responding to these complaints and potentially giving compensation to customers. So all of this means that actually the business's costs rise and that business would be less profitable as a result. Our second question, explain how choice of quality system could impact labour turnover. So here you could have a chain of argument that runs something like quality assurance means giving the workers more responsibility, which may mean that they feel more valued. This could be motivating. You could link to Maslow and Hertzberg here. This might mean that they enjoy their jobs more and therefore are less likely to leave the company, which would lead to a reduction in labour turnover. And the third question in this section, explain how quality might impact the marketing department's ability to price skim. So here you might say something like a good quality product creates a USP for the company. This sets it apart from its competitors, meaning that the product becomes more inelastic. This means that the business is able to set a higher price for the product without losing too much demand and still increasing revenue, which means that price skimming can be a suitable pricing strategy. This section, quality objectives, is about improving your evaluation skills, so making decisions and justifying those judgments. And I know there are a number of you that don't feel comfortable with that type of activity, but just to say there's nothing really wrong in terms of the answers here. Again, with all the evaluation of business, it's about how you're presenting them, but I will just give you my thoughts very quickly. So Arriva Trains, transport business, whether you're talking about trains or aeroplanes or coaches or whatever, then I would suggest that punctuality is going to be their key objective, because if punctuality isn't right, not only will you get the customer complaints and lack of customer satisfaction, which I think would be number 2 and 3 in terms of their objectives, it also gives you huge operational problems. So, if your train doesn't get there on time, then that means your next service that train is supposed to be running will be delayed. It might lead to delays of other trains on that line, etc. So punctuality or lack of punctuality creates huge problems for businesses. Airplanes, pilots go out of hours if they are on the flight for too long, etc. So lots and lots of operational type problems. So punctuality, I think, would be key. And I would suggest that the quality system here would be quality assurance would be the appropriate one, because it's a process. So you're making sure all the way through, for example, that you've got enough staff leaving the depot on time to make sure that they get to the train on time, to make sure that things can run, because otherwise you'd get lots of knock-on effects if you're not making sure that everything is happening to that timetable that needs to happen. Okay, number 2, a software development company. So here it's a different business from trains. So here, in the days of digital downloads and punctuality, the customer getting the good soon after they've ordered it really isn't that important, because it is likely that for a software company it is going to be clicking a button and it will be downloaded onto their computer, so that becomes less of an issue. And again, scrap rate, basically they've just created one product that they're going to be replicating over and over again on different people's computers, so scrap rate isn't as relevant. So for this type of thing, I would suggest customer satisfaction might be number 1, number 2 level of returns, and then number 3 customer complaints. And here again, I would go for quality assurance, because it's a very expensive process to create software. There's lots of different people involved, and the product development cycle goes through lots and lots of different stages. So you really want to be sure at all those stages along the way that you're getting it right, because you don't want to get to the end and find actually that product doesn't do what the customers want it to do. You've got to be finding that out very early on. If you're going to make money as a software development company. And then finally, number 3, rally bikes. So here we're into a manufacturing type environment, so again different from the other ones we've just been talking about. So for this one, I would argue that scrap rate might be their number 1 quality objective. So making sure that they've got a low scrap rate, that they're not getting to the end of production and then finding they've got to throw away lots of what they've produced. Number 2 might be level of product returns, and then number 3, complaints or satisfaction rating, something of that order. And in terms of quality system, then I would suggest that they're likely to have a bit of both. So they're likely to have some quality assurance, and that's processed throughout to try and make sure that things are right. But equally, they are likely to do some final inspection to make sure that actually when they've built that one bike, that actually it does work, it's capable of being ridden, etc. And I think that final point is quite important. Usually, it's not going to be an either or when you're talking about ways to improve quality. It's not going to be quality control or quality assurance. Businesses are likely to use aspects of both, and what will differ between those businesses is the emphasis that is placed on one or the other. So that is it for me on quality. I hope that has made sense to you, and look forward to hearing your feedback.